His collection of linked short stories, The Principle of Indivisibility, which I've read and I love and I highly recommend it, is available from booksellers everywhere, including here today. A novel in progress threatens to take him to the grave. Let's hope not too soon. Please welcome Brent Robison.
Thank you, and we have lots of empty chairs here, so people should sit.
People should sit.
Here at the last minute, I changed my selection of what I was going to read because my good friend Kevin, who helped put this together, gave me a couple of special requests, and I think they're very appropriate, so that's what I'm going to read. I'm going to read two different small sections from a short story that's in my book of short stories. The story is called A Confession of Love and Emptiness. And so far in the story, we've already learned that the narrator is in a hospital about to get open heart surgery. So this is a couple of pages in. My name is Johnson Burgess. Not the old standard John, but Johnson, J-O-N-S-O-N, after Ben. My mother, in love with her own sense of irony, wanted to make a statement about negative capability, perhaps her own, perhaps my father's, perhaps mine. And so I was named for Britain's most admired playwright of the 17th century, who towered and gloated over, who praised and patronized his failing friend, Shakespeare, but who today is lost in the master's shadow, all but forgotten, merely a minor player. And in his dim beginnings, before all his avid self-promotion, Ben Jonson was a bricklayer, like my father. Maybe she knew my father would rise above sweaty labor to his own higher plane of banality, too. She would chuckle low in her throat. She thought such contrivances were funny, like a jazz man tossing a riff from Mary Had a Little Lamb into his solo, a sort of inside joke, her personal comic subversion in a humorless, dark universe. When I was 6, my uncle's secret name for me was Muscles, since he said, with a name like Johnson, some might think that my father's name was John, but no, it was Sam, and Samson would hardly do now, would it? But I could be like Samson someday, he said, with a wild, wicked girlfriend, and biceps, and hair, and a fatal flaw. I didn't know what he meant by all that, but I did know about Samson, since my father read me Bible stories every other night at bedtime. My father and mother had an arrangement, a sort of alternating current that powered all my perceptions then, and I suppose now. On my mother's nights, she read to me stories of her choice, and I suffered through them, often yawning or dreaming, but sometimes enthralled, adrift, sunken in a syrup of words in her soft, deep voice, Dostoevsky and Kafka, and now and then Dickens, for a bright note. Odd how just now I felt a sudden longing, a deep twinge like the flex of a muscle somewhere near my heart, a longing for her to be here at the side of my bed, reading to me, reading anything, I don't care, caressing soft syllables with that voice like whiskey on velvet, filling with its deep folds this sterile, hard room, where now, without her, every sound, even a rustle, a whisper, clangs and echoes like a bloody bullet dropped in a surgeon's pan. And the rustles, the whispers I hear, are my heart, wheezing to force my blood through an ever-narrowing space, a gate where some freak twist of DNA raised a lump that year by year has gathered coats of calcium, layered like geologic sediments, recording the history of my heart, my life. A congenital aortic stenosis. Thank you, Mother. Thank you, Father. Thank you, God. Now I know, so I can say, my sin is this. I have lived a life obsessed by emptiness, on a quest for absolute vacancy. Consider this cup, made of plain white styrofoam, from which I've been taking meager sips of water as I stare out the window over the parking lot, past the trees to the highway, stare and sit for hours as I do every day trapped in this hospital bed. The cup is empty now, once full of water, now empty. Now ready, you might even say willing, to be filled again. What is the truth of a cup? What is the shape of an enclosed space when the enclosure is taken away? What remains here after my fingers clip and fumble in a flurry of fervent deconstruction? After I break away white chips like dry little ice floes, snapping them off one by one to end in a papery jumble on the table, mere flakes capable of nothing, what is left? There's no answer in the tiny hill of polystyrene stones and airy white ruin. No, but beyond it there, still wavering like heat in the peachy afternoon light, I see the emptiness of the cup. I see its shape, its essence. Its essence is absence. Its center lacks a center. A cup without a yawning open cavity like a wound is no cup at all. A receptacle must be receptive. The truth of a cup is vacancy. Like the antique blue bottle we found in a trash can, Billy Brock and I, loitering in the fall sunshine on the way home from school. Break it, I said to Billy. No way, man, it's cool. I'm going to put it in my window. He held the bottle up to the sun to see its cobalt flash, its sapphire shimmer. I grabbed it from his hand and smashed it on the street. Try it. Break a beautiful blue glass bottle, shatter it on the sidewalk. Watch the azure diamonds explode in a spray, then search like I do. Search in delight for the space that was in the bottle. You'll never find it, oh no. And that's the secret. That's why it's so beautiful, so perfect. Its filtered light transcendent as moonbeams, sublime as starlight, far beyond your grasp, beyond the capture of the carnal and mundane, the mud of flesh and stone. But it's there, that shape of air. It's eternally the same, the delicate phantom of some impeccable interior, untraceable without its bounds, the abyss in embryo, the laughing, quicksilver spirit of Hermes, god of enclosed spaces like gardens and tombs and bottles full of indigo light like the womb of a saint. Billy was angry. He shoved me and I sat heavily on the asphalt. You dumb shit, why'd you do that? He walked away, shaking his head. I looked for the bottle, the flawless, empty shape of the bottle, there where some infinitesimal thickness of summer air wavered and was gone. I sat still and watched a flicker of sun glint off a knife-like shard of blue. I felt happy. Okay, I'm going to skip a few pages a little later in the story. Pretend we're hearing some jazz instead of this. My father's big break and the planting of the seed of my future had come earlier when I was in the middle of high school, back when my mother was still around, when his company won the contract to take down the row of old brownstones that stood on West 63rd between Amsterdam and Columbus to make way for Lincoln Center. It was a hot, bright morning in May when the job began, and my mother and I, in celebration of the prosperous times to come, drove in across the GW Bridge to watch and wave to my father, and, she said, to be wild sophisticates free of home and school for a day. It was a role she played often. When I was younger, she had gone alone, my father determinedly uninterested, to the premiere of John Cage's work called 433, where the pianist sat on stage and played not a single note for 4.5 minutes. She was avidly reading Kerouac now and buying Miles Davis records and sarcastically imitating in her deep voice the vapid conversations of suburban housewives. I remember squinting at her that day as she stood in the still glare, wearing sunglasses and red lipstick and a crisp white blouse and sharp creased slacks, dangling her cigarette from 2 fingers, palm up, elbow tucked at her waist. One corner of her mouth always curved up a little, perpetually sardonic. I thought she looked pretty damn good for an old mom. We peered through a hole in the plywood wall, looking for my dad, but seeing only the big crane with that great gray baseball hanging on a cable thick as my arm, poised above the sidewalk in front of number 158. She stood close behind me. I could feel the smoke of her breath on my ear. And she said in almost a whisper, under the growl of engines, somewhere in this block was the childhood home of Thelonious Sphere Monk. Sphere. The word sounds hollow, like a ball of glass, full of air, not like the dull ball of heavy lead that now swung on its tether from that steel tower, slowly arcing back to a point of stasis, a frozen moment. Then forward, slow, gathering speed, but still seeming to be in slow motion. A ponderous power that met the stone wall with a thump, deep in a well, like an underground bomb, and with a big dry splash of dust, bounced back. The old house shuddered down to its heart, and the dust rained down, and when I saw the crushed stones, the caved-in wall, a hole where there had been no hole before, and the ball swung again, and the wall imploded in great cascades of dust. My mother said, a little dreamily, "Master of silence. I wonder if he's watching." And the crane roared, belching a burst of black smoke, and it swung the ball again. Maybe he's nearby, or maybe he's uptown somewhere rehearsing. I heard he's putting together a new quartet. Her voice was smooth and close. Maybe right now, as his home crumbles down, he's hunched over those ivories, playing and playing. She went on, and I was glad I understood. I'd been listening to her records too, every day lately, loving them. And now an ineffable spell came over me, something I never could have expressed. I imagined his blunt fingers hammering keys, and the half-beats of silence writing there, tipping over the edge into the next bar, as his dark hands came down hard again, and the notes and chords and riffs and runs pop up, fall down, roll over, just off rhythm, with a breath of delay, with canyons of emptiness suddenly gaping, and a round sound of cymbal or sax, glancing in just off center enough to declare this to be the music of Monk. No music like Monk. Sphere Monk, master of silence. Beams screeched and ripped and splintered. Glass burst and clattered and splashed like showers of crystal daggers glinting in brilliant sun. My mother blew soft smoke past my cheek and hummed inside my ear, a low, lazy version of Straight No Chaser. I was grinning wildly, stunned. Every day after school I was there, watching a clear, clean gulf of air take over the tangled, dirty ruins of rooms until an unsullied vacancy stood, echoing invisibly the shapes of corners and curves, of stoops and sills and archways and carved cornices, of square enclosures stacked one upon another, now just box-shaped phantoms of rooms, the spaces where people had lived. 10 years later, Alice and I sat in the Metropolitan Opera in Lincoln Center, watching La Bohème. Rodolfo singing to Mimi that her beauty is like the sunrise, and Mimi dying, crying back, "No, like a sunset," and Alice was in tears. But I was seeing all around us the faint outlines of buildings, brownstones with light in the windows, and through the shimmering walls I could see the rows of finely dressed New Yorkers in a grand golden hall. It was like those Curlian photographs I've seen since, where the image of a leaf is whole, unharmed, although its tip had been torn off before the photo was made. And I thought, build and destroy, build and destroy. That is the way of the universe, the way of God. All things built, once destroyed, leave their imprint forever, ghost shapes that linger in the gaps, made of quarks and neutrinos and photons everywhere, like the memory of water that hides in ice, like the possibility of ice that hides in water. Thank you.